in Missouri. I'm going to just go right to the live line because I want to pick his brain as much as possible. Executive Director, American Bail Coalition, Jeff Clayton is standing by so we can chat about this. I think the Supreme Court needs to step up, don't you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's time to put, kind of our chips on the table and, hash this out and, get some public scrutiny on this and, see what the right solution is for Missouri.
I agree because, I was reading a post. I can't remember the sheriff's name. I know I shared it and it was very poignant about how officers had to chase down this guy who was wanted by the law, and they put their lives at risk, high-speed chase. The guy goes to jail. He's out 5 minutes later, and then when he gets out again, people die in them trying to take him into custody after committing another crime. And, I mean, I don't want my brothers and sisters in blue to be putting their lives on the line so that these people can just get out in 5 minutes. It just seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the things that people need to realize is that repeat criminals is what we need to try to stop. We looked in Michigan and we found out that 17% of defendants drove 80% of the jail costs. So that tells you that there's a very distinct population who do it over and over again, that the rules are enabling, that are actually the people that we need to give judges the power to stop.
All right, so let's talk about the rules. It used to be you got smacked with a bail that was prohibitive to a degree that it was an incentive for you to either sit in jail or get your act together. That's basically what it was. And now what's happening? Tell people what's going on, Jeff.
Well, it's a move away from requiring people to post bail. And so what happens is judges and prosecutors have to exhaust all of their quote-unquote non-monetary conditions, which could be put them on a ankle monitor or supervise them by a county probation department or whatever before they can ever go to bail. So they put a hurdle in the law for judges and prosecutors to be able to request and to be able to get bail, and also to be able to request an arrest warrant. Now they're required to show that there's some evidence that this person's a flight risk or danger before they can even obtain a warrant for their arrest. So we've really just sort of weakened the system and made it harder for judges and prosecutors to get to where otherwise they would be able to get fairly easily. Okay,
so which legislator put this forward in Missouri? Do you know the name?
Yeah, so there's a bill to repeal the court rules by Representative Hill, and then there's a second bill, and I can't remember the legislator, that kind of makes a few fixes to the legislation. So there's kind of two schools of thought on this, repeal the whole thing and start over, or, maybe try to fix it.
Yeah. So how did it end up being a thing in the first place? Did they vote it through? Did the governor sign it? What happened?
No, so this was passed completely by the Supreme Court. The panel that was put together that, did the work on this was not open to the public. We didn't even know about it until the rule change came out. We weren't on it. The ACLU, any of the main interest groups on criminal justice, weren't there. There was no report, no data collected or anything like that. We just found out in December of 2018 that the rules were going to change in July of 2019, and that's what happened.
All right. So people are getting out on their own recognizance for all sorts of crazy stuff, aren't they?
They are, from what we can tell, and it definitely is having an impact on the system.
Well, and it's having an impact on future victims and families. I'll tell you that for sure. And a lot of times people think, oh, it's white privilege or it's political empowerment of families with strength. This is for everybody. I mean, I know people who are talking about a guy who accidentally killed somebody in an accident, but it turned out he was drunk, and he goes, "Don't worry, I'll be out tomorrow." It's that sort of thinking where the punishment doesn't fit the crime anymore.
Yeah, and I think we've extended the presumption of innocence a little bit too far to wipe out past crimes, to wipe out past failures to appear in court. Yeah. And that's what judges are looking at, right? Is that this guy's a 5-time bank robber, real case in New York, and he never shows up, and, it's time to make him post bail or he's sitting here. Mm-hmm. And to remove that from judges and make them say, well, I could make him get a job, or I could send him to treatment, or I could do all this kind of stuff and have to prove that before they can go to bail, it's just too high of a bar.
Yeah. So the percentage of arrestees who are potentially dangerous or just don't go to court, is that pretty high?
Well, we don't have any statistics yet, which is another thing that we pointed out. When the Supreme Court went and gave the State of the Judiciary speech, the Chief Justice proclaimed that it was working. And our point was, well, put up or shut up. I mean, where are the numbers that show that new crimes on bail are down and that people are showing up when they don't have to post bail? Because our experience in other states is that's not the case. in Houston, Texas, on these misdemeanor cases, the failure to appear rate got up in the 40-50%. So you had 1 out of 2 people not showing up for court. So until they put the numbers out, we'll never know.
All right. So the American Bail Coalition doesn't like this much either, because that's what you do. You're in the business of bail, right?
Yeah, we are. And of course, there can be changes in Missouri's system, as we've pointed out. It's not all about the bottom line. And so just to have a process that's not public, we've been able to coexist with many other reforms in many other states. We just didn't get the opportunity here, and that's really all we're asking.
Okay. So they just came out, and the justice stood up and said, this is a triumph. This is a new law, and it will help who? Who's helped by this? Criminals?
We're not really sure who's helped by this. There's been no suggestion in Missouri that we've heard from sheriffs and others that the system was actually too weak in the first place, and that maybe something needed to be done on these recidivism cases where people do it over and over again while they're on bail. And so there was no effort to really do anything except, make it easier for criminal defendants to go through the system and not have to post bail.
And I've got family members who go to jail on a regular basis. I think every family has a couple of those, because everybody makes their own choices in life. But it is hard to come up with bail to get them out. And I'm at the point in my life where if they call and they say I'm in jail, I'm like, well, have a nice day. Because, whatever you did, sit there, because I'm over it. And I think if more families did that, this wouldn't have been such a big thing either, instead of crying, the bail's too high. You know what I mean?
Well, as we always say, bail is a test of your ties to the community. And, it's never technically about the amount of money, usually, right?
Right.
Is that people can come up with $200 to post a $2,000 bail bond. And it's the question of, do people believe in you? Do they believe you're going to go to court? Do they believe you're going to do what you're supposed to? And a lot of times the answer is no, even though the parents could be, rolling around in a Rolls Royce saying it isn't happening this time.
Exactly. Your past decisions have predicated whether or not we trust you with our $200, because money's not free. Okay, so we've got lawmakers signing a letter now saying the Supreme Court needs to look at this again, right?
Yeah, so 82 lawmakers sent a letter saying they need to suspend the rules and look at other reforms, really, and not waste any time. Let's move on it right now.
Well, even here in Cape Girardeau, we're seeing an uptick in violent crime. And I wonder, I can't help but think if it's just because everybody's gone crazy, or the greed and the entitlement has gotten to the point where we can't get it under control. Some people think it's just more gang activity moving in. I'm like, that stuff will crop up anywhere where people think they can get an upper hand on somebody with violence. That's just a thing. You don't have to bring it here. It grows wherever it is, as well as being a mentality. But if we don't have punishments that will keep people locked up for violent crime, because some of these crimes that they're getting out easy on are violent, then they get chased down by the cops, they get thrown in jail, the person they were threatening to kill or whatever, they can get out and then kill them and then not worry about it a whole lot. It's just, it doesn't seem to help the victims of crime at all here.
No, it doesn't. And the other thing is, it doesn't help the suspects. We're enabling them at this point. We're enabling them to continue a life of crime from which they're never going to be able to extract themselves. By letting them have no respect for the system, know that it doesn't matter what the police do, doesn't matter what anybody does, that, the presumption of innocence extends so far that, I'm innocent of all charges for all time. And it's just not a good system. And what ends up happening is it emboldens these criminal populations against the police, who end up, unfortunately, killing more of them because they're just not afraid of the police. They know that there's no consequences.
Right. And meanwhile, the police have to be afraid to do their jobs because everybody cries racism and hate and that they are power-hungry, crazy people, which isn't the case 99.9% of the time. But here's the thing. I don't think that this applies to everyone. I think some people go to jail and do reform and should be let out to try to get their lives back on track and to move forward. I know that there is prison reform on the president's desk over and over again, and he's trying to do more with that. And I believe that that is something that should be looked at, especially for women who were beaten up for 20 years and then finally just kill the guy because they're sick and tired of being beaten up every day, and they sit in jail for the rest of their lives for basically defending themselves. I think there is reform that needs to happen, but I think that this was a fell swoop in the wrong direction.
I agree, and we all know that crime prevention is the number one, and that could be various things like going back in time to full day kindergarten all the way up to the complete lack of drug treatment and substance abuse treatment we have in the system that, once people get in, they're on these drugs, we can't get them off. And that's a major problem that we're not addressing. That would be a better use of dollars than, trying to make it easy for these 16, 17% of people who are the hardened repeat criminals to have an easier time through the system.
Yeah, drug rehab is huge. If we could find a way to treat people for drug addictions while they're in jail, that'd be great. I know some places offer that, but most don't. They have to go in there and DT, and it's bad. It's a really bad thing. But I don't have all the answers either, Jeffrey, but I know that letting them out with a slap on the pinky finger is not the right idea here. This does not show compassion. This shows a lack of good judgment.
I think so. Yeah, and the other thing is, like I said, we're hearing from law enforcement and others that the system was too weak in the first place. Mm-hmm. That we were too weak on some offenders. Maybe we were too harsh on some others, but we didn't really get into the what's. And maybe it was just that we needed to focus more on some of these violent crimes and focus less on some of these traffic tickets and that sort of thing. But we just never went through that analysis.
Yeah, I just got a message from somebody who said our prison populations are far too high. We have overcrowding. Something had to happen. Let's give this a chance to see if it works. We've already seen that it doesn't work because people are getting out and automatically going back to their life of crime and being caught and sent back and let out and being caught and sent back. It's a repeat cycle.
Yeah, and also we're talking about county jails, and that was certainly never the reason given by the Supreme Court or anybody else that we had to do this, that we were somehow going to fix jail overcrowding, and that this was the way to do it. And frankly, long term, I don't think this helps, because if we give them a free pass 2 or 3 times, they're just going to get hammered by the judge at the end of the day anyway and spend more time incarcerated. Mm-hmm. We're just enabling them to do it many more times and just cost the system that much more money.
Right. And at some point, this is going to change, and then all of those repeat offenses are not going to bode well for them when they get sentenced, when we get things back on track.
Exactly. The judges will have had enough of giving them the free pass, and I think they'll end up hammering them harder. And we've seen that in some jurisdictions where they get a free bail and then they don't show up, and then all of a sudden it's $10,000. Mm-hmm. Whereas under the old system, maybe in the first instance it was like $5,000. So we're seeing that already.
Well, they can get out on their own recognizance and then not show up for trial and go to jail for the full sentence then too. So we've got right. to find a happy medium here. There's got to be something that. How can people learn more, Jeff?
Go to our website. ambailcoalition.org. We're also on Facebook and Twitter.
It's the American...
Or just Google the issue. There's a ton of articles out there.
Yeah, and many of them say the exact same thing, that we have made the justice system weakened, almost beyond repair at this point if we don't act now. He's the executive director at the American Bail Coalition, Jeff Clayton. Jeff, thanks for being on the show today. This is such a mess, isn't it?
It is. Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a good one. Bye. If I have a loved one who goes to jail and they are truly sorry, and I see that they don't have a pattern of behavior and they really just need to get out and get a fresh shot at life and have a chance, I would move hell, high water, mountains, people, and anything that I could, especially if it's a very young person. I would do anything to help them. But at some point, bad decision after bad decision, after disrespect, after in your face, I don't care, I'll do what I want behavior, you just got to throw up your hands and say, I hope that you like that environment, because that's where you're going to have to stay now.